Welcome to End of Life University on YouTube. Today I'm sharing with you an interview I did with Marsha Filion. She's the Executive Director of Hospice Help Foundation in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And she'll tell us all about their foundation and how they help individuals on hospice who are dealing with poverty and have basic human needs that are being unmet, like paying the electric bill or paying for heating in their home, how their foundation has been able to help these people, not only in New Hampshire, but they have been supporting hospice patients in many other states as well, and are looking to expand their reach someday in the future, hopefully. So I think you'll enjoy my conversation with Marsha and learning about Hospice Help Foundation. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel down below, and also subscribe and leave a rating and review for the podcast wherever you happen to listen. If you're so inclined, I'd appreciate it if you'd go to eoluniversity.com/support and find out 3 different ways that you can make a small contribution to help keep this podcast and the YouTube channel on the air. So thanks in advance if you choose to do that, and we'll move on with my conversation with Marsha Filion. Today, I'm very happy to welcome my guest, Marsha Filion. Marsha is the Executive Director of Hospice Help Foundation of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. She trained as a hospice volunteer in 2010, and she joined the board of Hospice Help Foundation in 2013, serving in a range of capacities, including board chair and marketing director, before becoming executive director in 2018. Marsha considers it an honor to be able to help bring dignity and comfort to people during a critical time in their life. You can learn more about Hospice Help Foundation at their website, hhelpfoundation.org. And I'm really excited to learn about this. So Marsha, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Karen. It is such a pleasure to be here. And, I've seen your past list of guests, and I just feel, really honored to have this time to talk to you, to meet you, and to thank you for the work that you are doing. That's great.
Yeah, it was actually a listener wrote to me and said, you need to know about Hospice Help Foundation in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and connected me to the website. And as soon as I read about it, I thought, oh, that's a topic we really need to talk about on the podcast. So I was so pleased that you responded and you're willing to come here to talk with me today. I'm sure in the midst of your busy life, but
Well, I mean, I think we're all sort of in that right now, but yeah, we have some amazing supporters who believe in the work that we do and advocate for us. So, I'm just very excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
yes, you're so welcome. Well, according to your bio, you started out as a hospice volunteer back in 2010, and I'm curious about what led you in that direction in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, this might be too much of a generalization, but I feel that so many people who work in hospice have a personal story that has led them to the subject. For me, it was that when I was 2 months to go, my first pregnancy, I found out that my mom was she had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Mm.
Um, and she called and said she didn't have much time left, maybe 3 months. And I it was such a challenging time because here I was excited about the birth of my first child, but also like faced with the loss of my mom, and these two sort of extremes sort of collided together. She she has outlived her diagnosis by over a decade at this point. And after my first son was born, I wanted to honor her because we still weren't sure how much time we had left together. So I wanted to honor her work that she had done in hospice, by becoming a volunteer, not only to be able to support her in her decline, which we thought was like right around the corner, but also just to appreciate this world that she was part of and that was so meaningful to her. Um, and I haven't looked back ever since then. I think
Mm.
once you start thinking deeply about death, it really sort of changes the whole way that you live your life. I really do believe that, and there's no way to leave that perspective behind. So yeah, so I trained to be a hospice volunteer while raising a baby at the same time, juggling life and death, and the sort of highs and lows that came with that, and just making the most of my time with my mom. And you know the months turned into days and years, and we I think mom and I both have a new relationship with death. um and we can talk about that a little bit, but it's always with us. We're always thinking about it, and I think it compels us to make sure that we are trying to live each day to the fullest. And as part of Hospice Help Foundation, we want to make sure that people are talking about their preferences and thinking about what they want at end of life, and learning about what hospice can provide to people, and just trying to educate as much as possible. So Hospice Help Foundation works with hospices to support their patients who are struggling with poverty. And I became the executive director in 2018. I had been on the board for a number of years. And as you said, I had been working with nonprofits and supporting them. And I just love the work that the organization was able to do, and the support that it was able to provide to people in their time of need. And so when the opportunity opened up for me to step in as executive director, I was so honored and felt so fortunate to have that chance.
Mm.
And
It
yeah, just haven't looked back. Yeah.
it's so interesting. Like we often compare birth and death and talk about these, these huge transitions of life at the beginning and end of life. And you yourself lived through ha- holding on to both of those at the very same time, which had to have been such a profound experience.
Yeah, I think I still haven't fully been able to grasp all that entails. I mean, the emotional highs and lows were extreme. But you know, I'm grateful to have an awareness of both spectrums, and to I don't think I will ever be friends with death or be comfortable with it, or I don't know if I'll ever be able to accept it, especially for children, or for very young people. It's still a loss, but I can understand it, and I can I talk to my kids about it and make sure that they know that our lives are not infinite, and that we need to find a way to contend with that, and accept that fact.
Well, I wanted to say, as a new grandmother myself, I feel happy for your mother that she has had a chance to be a grandmother to your children. That's because I know how special that is, and so I'm grateful that she she has received far more than might have happened at that time in her life. This many more years, so I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. We were just looking at it one day to the next, and my oldest son has turned 13, and she's had a chance to meet Max as well, my youngest son, who's now 8. And they have a great connection, and it's really beautiful to see them playing together. And I guess you just never know what tomorrow brings. And so it's just, we just try to live each day to the fullest. That's it.
Exactly. That's the very best philosophy and the best thing we can do.
Yeah.
But maybe you could explain, well, to me and to our listeners, what Hospice Help Foundation is, and how it operates, and what you do at the foundation.
Yes, absolutely. So Hospice Health Foundation began in 2008, and we were operating under a corporate umbrella. So we were supporting their patients. Um, in 2015, we decided to become an independent organization registered here in New Hampshire so that we could work with a range of different hospices in our area. And and yes, we've become an independent organization. Our focus is on New Hampshire, but we work with neighboring states as well, and actually unofficially across the nation. So our support has reached patients, from all 4 points of the compass. And what we do is we support hospices whose patients are struggling with poverty by funding essentials that directly boost their comfort and their quality of life. The way that we're set up is that social workers usually, or other members of the hospice team, will apply for support and for a one-time grant on behalf of their hospice patient who they've identified as needing some extra help. And I send that to my board of directors who review requests, and they vote on it essentially. And within 24 hours is our goal. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but within 24 hours, we usually are able to make a payment to the service that they've requested. So the things that we cover are things that you and I would absolutely just normally take for granted. It can be shelter so that a hospice patient doesn't have to worry about eviction or moving out of their home, and they can stay surrounded by their friends and family. Heating this time of year, absolutely. People are looking for fuel assistance and heating. Electricity bills so that patients can keep the power running. And we see this a lot with people who have COPD and are using oxygen machines, and their bills, sort of skyrocket to make sure that they're able to breathe through the night. And essentials like food and clothing. We also cover transportation to keep family members connected during a critical time. And we also do modest last wishes so that, we're not anything like Make-A-Wish Foundation, but we can do modest requests like, a meal from a favorite restaurant, or we just helped a veteran take a bucket list trip to feed a giraffe at the local zoo, which was really
Mm.
wonderful to see. Yeah. So, and, usually the requests are quite humble, because when you're frail and at end of life, Disneyland is usually not an option. And it really is the focus on, again, making the most of your time with loved ones, being surrounded by the things that bring you joy, and being comfortable. And, we really love what we do because we know that we're impacting the hospice patient, but usually also at least 3 to 4 family members who are caring for them or are dependents. So they are also able to sort of stay in the home or benefit from the heat, being able to run through the winter. We also love that it often helps the hospice team, because if they have a patient who is stable and comfortable, it usually means that they're going to be more open to the care and advice that they're trying to provide. It's often usually the first bit of good news that they have, and we make sure that it's up to the hospice team to be able to provide that news to their patient that the grant has been accepted. So it can establish a great amount of trust between the patient and the hospice team. And you know, we're just there aren't a lot of organizations that provide the support that we're providing to this population. So it's usually a last resort for a lot of people.
Wow, it's so that just touches my heart so much because I remember back to my own hospice days. And I think for people outside of hospice who are aware of the hospice benefit from Medicare, and we always brag about how all these things are covered by the Medicare benefit, and people forget how many other just basic needs of life are important and necessary for our patients. And we forget that they may not have access to it, and they may not have the funds to simply to pay for enough food to eat or to pay their utility bills. And having seen some patients in that situation, and I'm really touched by what you offer to people because I think it makes a tremendous difference to be able to help people with their basic needs.
Yeah, and I mean, the hospice teams are so amazing at the support that they're trying to provide to patients, but, I know that when I have a cold, let alone, stress of work or the bills or admin that I need to do, I'm distracted and grumpy and, I can't pay attention to things like, you know, my mortality or, thinking about the loose ends that need to be tied up before I go or, trying to make the most of the time that I have with loved ones. I mean, it would just be beyond my capacity if I were worried about whether I could, who's going to pay the bills when I die or, if the power is going to be shut off tomorrow and how do I keep it, how do I keep my kids warm? It's just, I mean, it must just be absolutely overwhelming. So we're happy to provide this kind of, this opportunity to have some financial stability.
So that's interesting to hear. It's the hospice staff themselves who apply for the grant, and they're able to see just in their visits with the patient in the home, they're able to probably get a really clear picture of what each person might need and who has the most dire need. Do you get more applications than you're able to fund, or what happens there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great question. We've been very fortunate so far. Um, we have pretty much grown in line with the funding that we have available to make that possible. The pandemic was a really interesting time of year because, as you probably know, a lot of non-essential hospice staff were not able to go in and visit with patients. And for hospice, that was often the social workers who are our boots on the ground. So we had a steep decline for the first part of the pandemic when no one was able to go in and make those visits with patients. Um, and we realized that it was a challenging situation, but luckily, we took the downtime essentially that we had during the pandemic to really just connect with the social workers so that they knew about the work that we do because sometimes there's a lot of turnover and you just want to make sure that you are connected with everybody. Um, so we did a lot of education and outreach to hospice teams to make sure that they remembered us and understood the support that we were able to provide. And as a result, the end of 2020 and into 2021, we had some of the biggest growth that we've ever experienced as an organization, which is heartening, because we know the need is out there. We've seen that, people who were struggling before the pandemic have been hit the hardest by the economic fallout afterwards. And of course, even today with inflation, it's been really hard for people who were struggling or financially insecure. And there's not a lot out there to help people through this difficult time. And then you've got medical expenses on top of that. It's just overwhelming. There's also a divide between men and women. We're seeing that a lot of, especially older women, when they go on hospice, you know, they've often experienced the loss of their spouse, and that has sometimes used up all their savings. And, because women generally have a lower salary, they have less of Social Security to be able to call upon. So seeing more older women who are in poverty and in need of help. Um, some other challenges that we have are that, hospice teams and the healthcare in general are facing a staffing crisis. So, it's definitely a request over and above what hospice teams are expected to do, this application to Hospice Help Foundation. And we've just been really humbled by the number of people who have taken these extra steps to help their patients on top of, a huge census that they're dealing with. So there are extra challenges, but we have just been extremely fortunate to have community support and donors who've stepped up during these challenging times to make sure that we could be there for everyone who turns to us and qualifies for our support.
And I wanted to ask how you're funded. It sounds like largely by donations, just from generous people.
Yes, we are completely donor funded. During the pandemic, we got our first federal funding, which was really nice and something that we need to look into. But primarily, it's our community of supporters. So private donors, private foundations, and local businesses who are supporting us. We are a lean and mean organization. The way that we're set up is that, if hospices know about us, then it just takes a staff member to take the time to fill out the application form. And we've made that application form as simple as possible for our hospice teams because we know that time is of the essence for everyone involved. So with more funding, we can do more and help more people. And again, like our focus right now is on New Hampshire and the neighboring states, but we are seeing the need across the nation. And I know that's only going to continue to grow. Another focus for us is looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, because across the nation, around 80% of hospice patients are white. And we want to be part of the solution to address this inequity and make sure that the benefits of hospice are reaching under-supported and underserved communities. So when more people find out about it, we know the need is only going to increase. The senior population is growing. Social supports are not able to match that growth. There's going to be a lot of need for our support.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm really glad to hear that you're working like many of us are on these diversity issues, because it's something we didn't pay enough attention to in the past, and it's so important that we're being more inclusive now. But I'm just imagining that there are social workers from all over the country listening to this saying, "Oh my gosh, we need this in my community." They already have a list in their heads of all the patients that, I mean, sometimes it causes suffering as a care provider if you know that your patient is not doesn't have enough to eat, or is in a distressed situation and you can't do anything about it. Yes, you can help with their illness. I mean, you can help provide the medical care that they need, but when you know there are other needs, it's very challenging to be in that situation and not have any recourse or any options for helping them. So I'm just imagining people out there thinking, that is something we definitely need all over the country. And when this first got started back in 2008, was there a particular need or a particular person who became aware of the need? Because I'm always curious about, where does this inspiration come from to start such an organization?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's a really excellent question. So, I think a lot of hospices do provide some kind of support in this way, but it could be limited. Like I've heard of a couple hospices that will provide $250 for supporting their patient. But if you are, you know, if you're facing, the levels of financial insecurity that we are seeing people experience today, $250 will get you groceries for a week, and that's, maybe a month, and that's it. It doesn't really cover it. And so I love the work we do, and I absolutely believe in it. It's also not enough. We provide a one-time form of support for patients. The average grant that we are requested is for around $650 of support. But we've definitely helped people with heating, with mortgages, with rent. Our priority is to make sure that they can stay in the comfort of their home and be comfortable, be surrounded by their family members, and just focus on living and making the most of this time that they have. In an ideal world, I think hospice patients would have this kind of support while they're on hospice. It would be a guarantee. It's worked for us because most people are not on hospice for very long. And so the one-time support often is enough to help their family get through the time that they're, it's on average, I think it's something like 3 weeks, the average person is on hospice. So that does provide the stabilization needed. But, in an ideal world, people would be on hospice for the 6 months that they should be, and they'd be able to fully benefit from the range of services and supports that their hospice team provides, and they wouldn't have to worry about being evicted, or they would be able to keep the power running, and they'd be able to use the oxygen machine even at the nighttime, to so they didn't have to worry about counting their pennies. Um, we aren't able to do that. We just don't have the resources to be able to provide that. And we would love to be a national organization. Um, we just don't have it yet. We just don't have the ability to do that. But I think the need is there. And, I would encourage anyone to look around and see if there's a hospice that they can support, or if they want to help us go national, we would love that too. It's it's crazy that, you know, people are having to worry about this as they're dying. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and it seems so cruel and so unnecessary. But I'm impressed that you've obviously the members of your community who are showing up to make donations and to support the foundation, they've obviously recognized the need, and they are happy with how you're meeting that need. And so you've been able to make the case sometimes for people who are invisible in lots of communities. I mean, there are generous people in many communities who have no idea how much others may be suffering. And if they knew, they might be willing to step up, as people have in Portsmouth. So I'm just impressed with the job that you've done in terms of educating the community and rallying their support.
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing community, and our board of directors is also great at, spreading the word about the work that we do, and our ambassadors too. And, I think you know, when people have had an experience on hospice and they see the care that their loved one is getting from the team, they, it's a visceral reaction. They're so appreciative, and they want to make sure that everyone can have this kind of care and support at like one of the most critical times of our lives, and it makes an impact on the family members as well, as they're trying to deal with this grief and loss, and to see their loved one be comfortable and cared for, supported, and even have potentially a good death. It is so meaningful, I think, that people deeply understand and appreciate the work, and want to make sure that it's available to those who need it the most.
I think it's really healthy for a community to have an opportunity to come together and help take care of those people in need, to first of all be aware of the needs, and then to have this opportunity at any level at which they're able to make a donation. I'm sure from the smallest amount to the largest donation that you receive. But it's healthy when the community can work together and then see that there are results. They can actually change people's lives and make things better when they do step up and come together. And so I feel like we need lots of organizations in all of our communities that gather people and give people the inspiration. Like, this is something we shouldn't disagree on in any way. We should all be in favor of making sure people at the end of their lives have the very basic, simple comforts that they need.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's just a basic human right that people should have. They should be able to die with dignity, and as comfortably as possible. I would love for it to be part of Medicaid or Medicare. Just it's a social determinant of health. It's just it's an essential in order to be able to respond to the care that they're receiving from a hospice team. I will say, we have lots of opportunities for community to come together through things like death cafes, and we have some educational opportunities to help people explore end of life options. And this has been a really wonderful way for, you know, the average layperson on the street, the average person on the street, to sort of be exposed to this world and to start thinking about the fact that we are not immortal, and that, we will all experience this at some point. Um, and it has been really heartwarming and humbling and wonderful to connect with people and talk about this to talk about death. It's so important. It's such a grown-up conversation that no one ever wants to have, but like when you do have it, it can forge wonderful connections with other people, in surprising ways.
Mm. Yes, that's so true. And I like what you're saying. Sometimes helping other people who are facing death, that's a good entry point for easing into thinking about your own death. Because I realize sometimes in our efforts to get people to do their advance directives and plan ahead for their own death, we might be pushing them a little too hard to look at their own mortality. But if they begin by hearing that someone in their community who is at the end of life needs help, that's a way of easing into it in a way and being supportive, and then gradually coming to the place where they're able to talk about their own mortality and face their own death.
Yeah, yes, yeah, it's any way that you can get people to talk about it. That's what we try to do. I have a dear friend who loves during this time of year to um present dessert at Thanksgiving and say, "You get no pie till you tell me how you want to die." And like whatever you can get to get the ball rolling and to have people sort of just pause from the rush and the commotion, especially you probably see it with your little grandchild, just the I think we're programmed to be in the full flow of life and the wonderful chaos, and to not want to think that one day, we won't be there to experience it or complain about it, or to rely on a future that we're shaping every day.
Yeah, so true. And does Hospice Hope Foundation do any sort of community education? Do you host any kind of webinars or workshops or anything?
Yes, we have. So, as I mentioned, we do death cafes almost quarterly, and we've started hosting those again in person at Cary Cottage, which is where we're based, and it's a place of beauty. We're right on the waterfront, and so it's a chance for people to sit and talk about a topic that they might not want to really discuss, um, in a place of beauty and in a really welcoming and friendly environment. And I really love death cafes because they're completely participant led. So, if someone has something that they want to, get off their chest, whether it's a fear or, a difficult family member who refuses to broach the conversation with them, they can talk about that. And the key to a death cafe is that you always have to have cake and,
Mhm.
delicious treats and coffee or tea to, bring the people in or give them an excuse to come. And then once you have them, you really just sort of open the floor and let them begin talking. And it's amazing what ends up getting discussed, whether it's, someone who wants to start planning their their memorial service, which they want to be there for, or people who talk about writing their obituaries, or they're thinking about their legacy. And it's people do talk about loss, and they're often tears because I think one great way to understand what you want at end of life is to see what you don't want at end of life. um, but it's ultimately a hugely life affirming experience. Have you had a chance to do a death cafe yet or something like that?
Yes. Yes, I've led several in person, and for a while I did virtual death cafe online.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how every single one is different, completely different, the conversations that happen. Because you might think, oh gosh, if you attend several, it'll just be a repetition, but not at all. People always have such different issues they want to talk about. And it shows you how much pent up need there is in people to talk about death. There, some people are just waiting to have a chance where they feel safe enough to bring it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just seen people be overwhelmed with gratitude for the chance to talk about it with other like-minded people, and just filled with relief, because their family members don't want to talk about it. They're like, "You'll be fine. You're not dying anytime soon." And there is a real reluctance out there, but I think slowly, I don't know if you've seen the numbers growing, but we've seen, devotees who come, year after year, and are demanding more of these, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's really wonderful, and that's a really nice way for the foundation to help the community as well, serving a really important role there just through hosting the death cafes. That it's a change maker really, for the community because it begins this word of mouth ripple of people who leave and are now more comfortable talking about death with their own friends and family too.
Yeah, and I mean, we work so closely with hospice that I just want to let people know about the benefits. And I feel like if people understand what hospice provides, it might not be right for them, but just knowing what holistic, I mean, it's like a completely different kind of support that you're getting. You've got a team as opposed to one specialized doctor here and one specialized doctor there, and you go to this one for your arm, you go to the other one for your leg. I just love that it's a team that works together. They care about you, they care about your family, and the focus is on, it's patient directed care. So you decide what the priorities and the goals are, and your team is there to help you. Um, and I just feel helping people think about that as an option doesn't have to be for them, but even just starting to think about that gets the taboo of death sort of taken down a notch. And having people think about death and talk about it, and see what people are going through, and the ways that they can make a difference to help, it really only benefits like our society as a whole. We've got people living longer, older lives, and there need to be some difficult conversations about what our choices are. It's not possible anymore to sort of have your head in the sand and just think, like when I was a kid, everyone who died on TV, it was always about like a sudden heart attack, and that just doesn't happen anymore. Like, I mean, that would be great, which is awful, but I mean, we're just seeing that death is more and more a long, steady decline, and it's expensive, and it's heartbreaking, and it's hard.
Exactly. And we as a society have not quite figured out all the ways in which we need to help and we need to take care of people, though hospice has been there for a long time now,
Yeah,
trying to keep up with it and trying to keep up with the needs of all the patients at the end of life.
yeah, yeah.
So I was wondering if you have any stories you would like to share of people that you've helped. You've already mentioned a few, but if there are any other stories you would want to tell us.
Oh yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna grab, sorry to go off camera. I'm just gonna hold up a picture for people who are just listening of one of my favorite stories. It was one of the first requests I got when I became an executive director. Um, and it was a request for Jean, who lived with her partner out in the middle of nowhere in an old farmhouse. They they're two women. So here's the picture of them. And because of their lifestyle choices, they were distanced from family members and really only had each other to rely on.
Mm.
And the farmhouse was falling apart. Their pickup truck was held together with duct tape, as the social worker told us. and they just wanted, it was under $400 to keep the house warm.
Mm.
As you see, Jean is, the one on the left. She was extremely frail. I just can't imagine this request came in January. Some of they had put curtains over some of the doors in their house to just sort of keep the heat within a certain zone. But I just couldn't imagine this lovely woman having to sort of protect herself from the cold, and to have the bone chilling cold be something that she had to contend with. So we absolutely approved that request. The oil delivery was able to drop off the oil the next day, and we paid them over the phone to make sure that that went through quickly. And it kept their house heated during her decline, and it gave them comfort to be able to be warm and to be
Oh,
together. Yeah.
yeah, that's very touching.
But so we receive all kinds of requests, and it's always sort of lovely to see the personality shine through. So I mentioned Frank with his, wish to visit and feed the giraffes, which
Oh,
I think is
yeah.
just awesome. That's a
Yeah.
bucket list item that everyone should have, I think. We've received requests for whale watch trips as last wishes. We just helped a woman named Donna, who is an 80-year-old patient living in a facility, be able to be there for her brother's 80th birthday party.
Mm.
And she was completely alone and needed wheelchair transport. So we funded that so that she could be there for that, for a milestone event. And we got these wonderful pictures back of the two of them having a great time together. And she had gotten all dressed up for the
Mm.
occasion and just looked really thrilled to be able to get out and see her brother and go to a party and feel like she was more than a patient, that she was a person again. Um, you know, th- we've received really simple requests. One of my favorite pictures is another woman named Gloria, who was again in a facility, and she didn't have friends or family nearby. She Because she was in a facility, she had limited savings and limited revenue. She had, I think, maybe you know, an annual like allowance of $50 a month to spend on things for her. And her social worker saw that she was feeling pretty glum, and she said, "What's going on, Gloria? Why are you so down?" And Gloria pulled out her glasses, and the frames were held together in a number of different places with medical tape. And she said, "I
Mm.
just feel, I know I'm sick and I'm an old lady and I have no right asking this, but I just feel terrible with these glasses on. I just feel embarrassed." And so her social worker took her out. They went to the frame shop and called up the foundation, and we approved a request for $50. The frame shop, you know, funded the other. They gave her a 50% reduction, so it was $50. And we've got this beautiful picture of Gloria with this huge grin on her face and her new spiffy lenses, just really feeling great about herself. And that's sort of why I love the work that we do, is to hear these stories and to know that, like, we're bringing joy to people's hearts and to their lives at a time when they don't get a lot of that. They don't get a lot of good news, and it's giving them something to remind them that there's a community out there that cares about them and that they matter. As Dame Cicely Saunders says, the founder of hospice, you matter right up to the last moment. And I totally believe that, and it's why I feel so fortunate to be involved with the foundation and to be able to do what we do.
It's
Yeah.
amazing how just such a small change can make such a big difference. And so you don't have to spend huge amounts of money on any one person to just change something and make a huge difference in their comfort and their sense of dignity and worth at the end of life.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you just said that so beautifully. I sort of want to write it down, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I think this is what we all need to remember going from one day to the next with our own lives is that what's what's really important, I mean, for Gloria, she wanted to just simply be proud of her appearance. She wanted to see the people who were coming in and interacting with her. And as you say, she just wanted to have some dignity. And I think that's all we all want is really, like a new fridge would be great, but what do you need? What's going to keep you comfortable and help you live your life and enjoy your friends and family being close by and being together and being able to hold their hand. Like that's what's really important.
Mm. Oh, it's just so beautiful. And I'm just so thrilled to hear about all the wonderful work that you're doing and that you're making a big difference in people's lives. And personally, I'd love to see a hospice help foundation everywhere because I can't imagine a community that doesn't need this, that doesn't have individuals who need a little extra support while they're going through hospice care. And so I'm just wondering, you said, "Oh, it would be great to be a national organization," but is that seriously a possibility someday down the road that your foundation could expand?
Well, absolutely. And I'm a little nervous saying this on, with your national listeners, but we do work with all hospices. You know, we we want to be there for hospice patients. So, this year we've helped patients in about 20 states. Um,
Wow.
we really welcome hospices, particularly those who are nonprofits, to reach out to us. And we do partner with for-profit hospices as well. We have an arrangement with for-profit hospices where we manage their memorial donations, and it's for profits that don't have a foundation of their own. If they have a foundation of their own, we hope that they will provide this kind of support to their patients in a way I feel like it's their responsibility to, especially if they are receiving memorial donations. The memorial donations that people are making are usually being made um, by loved ones of patients who received amazing care because of their staff. And we see that the gifts that we're getting, we're using to help stabilize their patients so their staff can again provide that great support. And I feel like, it is a responsibility that it is like, it just makes such a difference to hospice patients if they can be stable, that it seems a no-brainer to me that this is essential support people need.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I would like to say if anyone listening from some other state is thinking, "Oh, I'm going to start calling Hospice Help Foundation to see if they can help patients," that at the same time you brainstorm about how could I help get some more donations then for Hospice Help Foundation so that if we're asking for greater support for more people, that we're also thinking of ways that we can help provide more funding for the foundation as well to make that flow so that we keep paying it forward.
Thank you so much for putting that ask in. That is great. Yes, it's essential. We are seeing that people are struggling this year in terms of our the donations that we received have not been as strong as they have been in previous years, especially the last 2 years. I think people are overwhelmed. There have been a number of hot button issues this year, but with more resources, we can do more. We are very easily able to scale the support that we provide to anyone. The way that it's set up is very flexible and it's very responsive. And we make sure that it stays that way because we know that for hospice patients, every day counts. and they don't have time to go through a 3-month grant process. We really are focusing on a 24 to 48-hour turnaround time so that our impact is felt by the patients themselves. Um, and yes, we know that there are more people out there who could use the support.
That's really impressive that you have that quick turnaround time. So you have a very agile board who's committed to doing the work and doing it in a timely manner.
Yeah, they're so wonderful. They're passionate about it. They completely understand it. They, they want to do more as well. They're committed to the work that we do, and we're always trying to think of ways that we can grow. But I mean, as you say, the main limitation is really the resources. So if the funding is there, we could certainly, you know, make sure that we are reaching out to hospice patients and hospices across the nation.
So tell me, if someone like me wanted to make a donation, is it possible to do that online?
Absolutely. You can go to our website at hhelpfoundation.org and make an online donation. You could send a check to us and I can share our address. We're based in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 400 Little Harbor Road. And you could call or email me at Marsha at Help Foundation, and I can send you the link and the directions or anything you need. We always welcome donations, and every gift makes a difference, no matter how large or small. As I said, Gloria's frames were $50, and we've received requests for things like yarn. We have an avid knitter who has requested some yarn to just keep her busy and help her stay creative during during the cold winter months that are coming up ahead. So it doesn't yeah it the patients that we're helping don't need thousands upon thousands of dollars. It's gifts of all sizes that are making an impact.
Well, I'm just so excited to hear about this. I think it's really wonderful. And I'm really grateful to the person who informed me about it because I'm not sure I would have heard about Hospice Help Foundation without someone spreading the word. But now I'm hoping that a lot more people are aware of it from listening to this podcast. And maybe that will begin to make some ripples of change in other communities, but also increase the donations that you receive as well. And I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. And yes, I mean, I think that person might have been Laura, and she is a great community member who's training to be a death doula. She's come to some of our death cafes. And I mean, just the community, once you start sharing these topics, as I'm sure you have experienced, um, people who are comfortable talking about death and loss and thinking about the whole spectrum of life, uh, it's really rewarding and meaningful to have these exchanges and to I feel extremely fortunate and grateful to be part of this community, and thank you for all that you are doing to promote these kinds of discussions and the education again across the nation, help people think about end of life matters and how to maximize their time alive. It's inspiring for so many.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just remind our listeners to go to hhelpfoundation.org and just learn how you can make a donation or learn more about the work that's being done and think about it for your own community and become aware of these needs, these basic human needs that so many hospice patients have and get inspired to make a difference there. So Marsha, thank you so much once again for joining me today and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Oh, Karen, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for the work that you do and for this opportunity. I've loved it.
You're so welcome. It's been really fun to talk with you. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Marsha Filion. I really enjoyed learning about the Hospice Hope Foundation, and I'm surprised I never knew it even existed until this conversation with Marsha. And so I'm going to become a contributor to the foundation because of the great work that they're doing. I hope you'll consider doing that as well. So stay tuned for the next time I come back with another interesting video or conversation for you. And until then, bye bye.